Okay, on this video, I'm going to go through Matthew 24, verse by verse, through Matthew 24. So if you happen to have the Common Man's Reference Bible, it's on page 1449. And so we'll just go verse by verse through it, and then you can kind of follow along if you wish. And when I point out the cross references, I'm not going to go in great detail, but I'm amazed at how this chapter's applied, foolishly or deceptively applied. People try to apply it to themselves. I'm just amazed with that. I'm amazed at the deception the human heart can do and the subtleness of the great deceiver. If you just simply believe the words, in my mind, this is very simple. If you just believe the words, but then you have to ask yourself, who are the words written to? You see, all of the Bible is written to you or for you, but some of it's not written to you. It's like if you get a letter in the mailbox, and let's say your husband and wife, a real family, a dad, a mom, kids, okay, and there's their surname on the letter. Now, they all can read that letter, but something in there might be directed to the wife or something to the dad or something to an individual child. The entire letter is for them, but some of it may not be to them, and the Bible is the same way. So in Matthew 24, right off the bat, we see Jesus is involved. And so then you got to think, okay, the ministry of Jesus Christ. In Matthew 10, he told his apostles, he told them, do not go into the way of the Gentiles, nor the Samaritans. We are going to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay, so Jesus Christ's ministry was Jewish. The Sermon on the Mount is Jewish doctrine. Okay, and that's not hard if you just believe the words. Okay, and so, people nowadays who are so hyper, Jesus was a racist. He's only going to the Jews. He's a racist. Well, you just got to kind of laugh. Okay, but in Matthew 24, okay, so I'm going to go through some of this verse by verse, starting in verse 1. Jesus went out and departed from the temple. Okay, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Now, if you go to the cross references, you're going to see the one who oohed and ahed about the buildings was Judas Iscariot. Okay, and so he's oohing and ahed about the building. Okay, and then Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. So Jesus says, hey, the thing's coming down. It's coming down. Okay, and so, of course, that, made him think, caused him to think about that. Okay, then you got a paragraph mark. And it says, and as he sat upon the Mount of Olives. Okay, so they walk out of probably the north gate of Jerusalem, okay, or the northeast gate of Jerusalem. Okay, and then they walk down this valley part. You're coming down a valley, and to the right-hand side is a cemetery. It's like on top of the ground because it's all stone. And you see a lot of where mausoleums and crypts. About 175,000 Jews are buried there. They like to get buried there if they can because they think you're first in line at the judgment to get there. Like you don't have enough time. Okay, but then then the hill goes up and you walk past the Garden of Gethsemane. It's got olive trees in there, and you come up on this mountain. It's called the Mount of Olives. And if you look toward the west, you could see Jerusalem. Look over the old city of Jerusalem. The old city of Jerusalem, you can walk around the old city in about an hour and a half. Very small. No more than 100 acres, so very small city. And so then while he's up there, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Okay, so you got three questions there, and they're dealing with three different events in history. And question 1, when shall these things be? The destruction of that particular temple was in 70 AD. And what shall be the sign of that coming? Well, that's almost 2,000 years later. And then of the end of the world, well, that's another 1,000 years later. And so you have 3 different events, but there's going to be similar, but not exactly the same things. But the first thing before all 3 events, Jesus states, answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. So deception is the first characteristic prior to these events. The ease of deception. You see, it's easier to deceive people in these days than to convince someone they had been deceived. Now, then he adds to that thought, and then he gives the most effective ministers of deception are religious leaders. Verse 5, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And it's amazing to me how some people take Matthew 24 and put it in the wrong place because they got deceived. Okay, so now he's going to give some more characteristics. Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Okay, the ye, plural pronoun, the ye and the you in the King James Bible, he's talking to the apostles. And then it says, see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Okay, so there we go, the end. He's not talking about the end of the world. This 2 words, the end, are significant, and they will identify to be the end of Daniel's 70 weeks, the 70th week in particular, where Jesus told the apostles, you forgive until 70 times 7. That's very significant, but the end is not yet. Okay, then he says, for nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So you get natural catastrophes. Oh, and the world, oh, it's climate change, it's climate change, oh, it's climate change. Okay, and then he says, all these are the beginning of sorrows. Now, the sorrows there, I use a cross-reference there to John 16:20. If you have a Bible open, you're following along with me. And the reason why I use that is because the tribulation time period is likened to the delivery of a child, of a mother, okay, paralleling Israel to delivering the man-child. Okay, so you can know the general time period, but you don't know the exact day or hour. And then he says this, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted. Okay, you. He's talking to the apostles, so that might mean the apostles are coming back at a tribulation. They just might be. Now, Moses and Elijah are, and the implications are that Jeremiah might. So the apostles just might be coming back. That is going to be a wild scene. Okay, but again, they all the men I've mentioned so far are dealing with a Jewish ministry, Israel. The apostle to the circumcision is Paul. Peter, James, and John, when you get to the back of the Bible, in Galatians 2 verse 9 says that they were apostles to the circumcision. That's why you'll see Hebrews, James, 1st, 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John are strongly Jewish in doctrine. Then he says, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Okay, hated of all nations. Who's hated of all? America? Brazil? Mexico? Obviously, that's Israel. Okay, you hated of all nations for my name's sake, and then shall many be offended. Oh boy, do we live in a day and an age of hypersensitivity. And shall betray one another and shall hate one another. Okay, Micah 7 says you can't even trust a friend, you can't even trust your wife. In Micah 7. Then verse 12, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. Okay, how do they deceive them? Well, Revelation 13, they'll deceive them by great miracles. False apostles. And then he says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Okay, they get cold feet, get a cold shoulder. Okay, they can't trust anybody or anything. And then verse 13, this is a favorite Pentecostal verse to hold the church people in bondage, where you have to fulfill this, and this, go hash on tai tai bo tai, and that way you can prove that you can keep your salvation. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Okay, there's those two words, the end. Now in the reference Bible, I've got a little M there. Takes you to the center. Ezekiel 7, Matthew 13, Mark 13, 1 Corinthians 15, Hebrews 3, 6, 14, 1 Peter 4, 7, Revelation 2:26. There's more places. The end. The he, who's that? Jewish people. I'll give some more verification on it. This has nothing to do with the denomination called Pentecostal. You know, I find it interesting. Pentecost is a Jewish feast day. Why don't you call yourself the Sabbathcostals? Or the Feast of the Tabernacleists? But it's just amazing how people will take a Bible truth of another age and try to cram it back into their age. It's one of the tools of deception. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. The end of what? The end of Daniel's 70th week. The gospel of the kingdom. I know them JWs are going door to door giving the gospel of the kingdom, but unfortunately that's not the one that saves before the rapture. The gospel that's to be believed for salvation before the rapture is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. This is a different gospel. This is the gospel Jesus preached back in chapter 4:23 of Matthew, because this is dealing with a Jewish kingdom under the Messiah, Jesus Christ. This is the third time we've seen the end so far in this passage. The end. And then an interesting evidence that you better run is in verse 15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. How are they going to see it? Cell phone? Spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Daniel 8. Daniel 9. Stand in the holy place. Who's standing in the holy place? Papa Pizzeria is. You'll see that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. When you see this guy stand in the holy place, in particular in the Jewish temple, he says, whoso readeth, let him understand. Let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Notice it doesn't say, let them in America, or Alaska, or Canada, or Mexico, or Taiwan, or Japan, or Australia. No, this is Judea, because all of this is dealing with Israel. Every bit of this. This abomination of desolation. You know, some folks think that that's when Titus offered a sacrifice of a pig in the Jewish temple back in 70 AD, and then Satan was bound. Just utter nonsense. Sure, that was an abomination, but it's not the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. What is the abomination of desolation? It's when the Antichrist walks into the Jewish temple, declares himself to be God, manifests in the flesh, And the Jewish evangelists who sincerely thought he was the Christ now recognize he's the devil. And they resist, and he captures them, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, execute them on the spot in the Jewish temple, catch their blood, drink their blood, eat their flesh in a religious ceremony. Now, did cognitive dissonance just take place right there? Yeah, that's what the Bible says more about that idea than does church membership, baptism, tithing put together. Well, a couple of years back, Mel Gibson stated that in Hollywood, the greatest commodity is the blood of innocent children, and he called a bunch of people in Hollywood parasites off of children, satanic pedophiles. And we have approximately 1 billion people who thinks that a guy dressed in a fancy costume can hold up a cracker and say some magical words, and they believe it turns into the body of Jesus Christ, and then they stick them in their mouth like a cannibal. And then he can hold up this chalice with some fermented hooch in it and say some magical words, and they actually believe it turns into the literal blood of Jesus Christ. Now, you can take scientific, evidence before and after, and it's still going to be fermented hooch. And they drink his blood like a vampire. No, this is the Antichrist who actually does this. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. And when the Jews see that, I'm not going to see it unless the Lord allows us to see it from heaven. The ones in Judea flee to the mountain. What mountains? That's Petra. Isaiah 16, verse 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's the cross-reference I will have there. Flee down to Edom, Petra, the rock city. It's not in Tennessee. It's over there in Jordan. Then it says, let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Why? Because they got flat roofs there. It's not a shingled roof like we have. Neither let him which is in the field turn back to take his clothes. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Man, mama's got to try to run with a child. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Oh, Sabbath day. Oh, that sounds a little bit Jewish to me. For then shall be great tribulation. Is it not obvious? Such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. 70 A.D., destruction of Jerusalem? You don't think it's been worse than that? The Great Tribulation is going to be the most insane pandemic, worldwide catastrophe ever known to man. It's beyond your imaginations. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Oh, our Calvinist friend is going to jump all over that. Elect. See, elect too. See, the elect. That's the elect. That's me. Well, if you want to go into tribulation, have at it. But you have to take that word elect, go back to its first occurrence in Isaiah 42. I have an extensive footnote right there. Verse 23, then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe him not, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect. Again, Romans chapter 11, 5, that's Israel. He says, behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers. Oh, secret societies. Ooh, Illuminati. Ooh, the deep state. He is in his secret chambers. Believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Son of Man is a Jewish designation. And wheresoever the carcass is, there shall be eagles. there will be eagles be gathered together immediately after the tribulation of those days. Okay, is that 70 A.D.? Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Did that happen in 70 A.D.? No, it did not. There's no record of that. This is all tribulation time period, Daniel's 70th week, called Jacob's trouble, and that is called the end. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes, oh, there we go, tribes. Where are those tribes found? I'll take that cross-reference to James 1, verse 1, and Revelation 7, and Revelation 14. That's the Jewish tribes. The tribes of the earth mourn. They shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds and from one end of heaven to the other end. Oh, that's a whole other subject. You can go right there. The elect in this context is clearly Israel. Isaiah 45, verse 4. If that's not the reference you want, Isaiah 45:4, that will tell you the elect is Israel. Got nothing to do with born-again believers, technically. So there we are, up to there, verse 31, Matthew 24. I hope this is clear to you as it is to me. I just believe the words. I'm dumb enough. I'll be dumb enough to believe those words. And I'll be smart enough to recognize them there words weren't addressed to me, but they are certainly for me, and I believe them.